Welcome, sports fans, to the Sports with Ed NFL Draft Wrap-Up Show. In this show, I will go over each of the line selections and tell you how I think it'll impact the team, and also the grade I had for each round and each player they selected, plus an overall grade at the end. The Lions in the first round, though it was rumored they might make a trade and trade out of the first round, which might have behooved them if they did, but they selected Tyleik Williams, a defensive tackle from Ohio State. Now, it's kind of interesting to me that they took a defensive tackle when their glaring need is at defensive end, but they went ahead and did that, conceivably because they couldn't find a defensive end that spot, and they really wanted a defensive tackle with Aleem McNeil having expected to start the season on injured reserve. So I can see to that extent where they would select one. However, he wasn't first round grade. So for that reason, I gave him a B- on that. In the second round, the Lions traded up to get guard Tate Ratledge from, I believe it's the University of Georgia, and he's a guard. And while they did have a need at guard, considering that they had a bigger need at defensive end, and Tate Ratledge didn't exactly hit the nail on the head, though be it after having lost Kevin Zeitler, I do understand why they took him. I gave them a B- for that selection as well. And then in round 3, they made a trade with the Jaguars, giving up 2 third-round selections next year and getting 2 sixth-round selections to get wide receiver Isaac Tesla from the University of Arkansas. Now, my question is, when have you ever heard of a Razorbacks wide receiver being drafted? And based on the report I read, it was horrible. Now, I know they've done this in the past. They did this recently as last year with Sione Vaki, which was a very questionable selection. He still hasn't quite panned out yet, but I can see the potential in him. But this one's a real head-scratcher, and for that reason, because wide receiver, again, was not a glaring need, though they did need that, and that's the only thing that saved them from a failing grade, I gave them a D-. And then they didn't have a fourth-round selection. However, they did make a trade to get back into round 5 at the end of it. And with that selection, they took, I believe his name is Miles Turner, if I'm not mistaken, and he is a guard from LSU, if I'm not mistaken. This was a much, much better selection. And when I made the trade, I thought, there wasn't a defensive end readily available, so I thought, must going to be Miles Turner, and it was. And they got him for a 4th and a 7th round, a 4th and a, not a 4th. They got him for a 6th and a 7th round selection, which was really good at the end of round 5, considering where he graded. So for that one, I gave him the best grade of this draft. I gave him an A+. And now with that gives them 2 guards, and now that offensive line ought to be really solidified for sure. In the 6th round, they went with defensive end Ahmed Husseini, I believe he pronounced his last name, who was a defensive end from Boise State. Now, I don't want to get into a cultural thing, but he hasn't had much football playing experience. He stems from Egypt, which is fine if he can play, but he hasn't played much football. Now, granted, the Lions over 10 years ago drafted Ezekiel Ansah, who didn't have much playing experience either and was a raw talent in the first round, and he ended up being okay. It's possible that this guy, works hard, but he doesn't seem to be a very good tackler, and it doesn't really address their defensive end needs, and I hardly think he's going to complement Aiden Hutchinson. Excuse me. I hardly doubt he's going to complement Aiden Hutchinson the way that other people that were talked about as free agents would, like Khalil Mack or Trey Hendrickson, who's still available and the like. So for that reason, not really sold on him, and especially if he gets cut, it's going to be really bad because it's going to leave a glaring hole there that they have to address if they want to be a Super Bowl contending team. So I gave them an E on that one. And then in the 7th round, with their first selection, they took safety Dan Jackson from the University of Georgia, and having gone over his scouting report, he missed a team-high 15 tackles. He's not expected to be able to cover in the NFL. He's not a good tackler, so that only leaves him as being a special teams player, and I think the Lions could have done way better, and they could have addressed their defensive needs in that position too, instead of just essentially wasting the selection. But because he is a pretty good special teamer, I give him a D- on that one. And then with their last selection, they took, I know his last name's Lovett. I forgot what his first name was. I think it's Caleb. I don't remember what his first name is, but he's a wide receiver from the University of Georgia. And he actually graded pretty well. A lot better than I thought Isaac Tesla did for sure. So for that reason, I gave him a B. So when you calculate overall, I mean, they've been getting C pluses all these years. It actually came out to a C overall. So while I believe now that they've addressed their offensive line, although it's going to be a lot younger, but now that you have Christian Mahogany and Giovanni Manu and that, I like how they are at guard. And hopefully Graham Glasgow will be a lot healthier and have a much better year this year as well. So that takes care of that spot. I think defensive tackle set with Tyleik Williamson. If Aleem McNeil comes back, that really is going to give them a lot and some significant depth there for sure. They addressed the wide receiver spot somewhat. I don't know if they're looking to move on from Tim Patrick. I don't know that Isaac Tesla is going to be the answer, but certainly the Mr. Lovett may very well be, and I could see him usurping Tim Patrick possibly, or he could hang around the practice squad, or he could make it the team as a kick returner because the Lions do need that as well. But they still have a very much, I think, a glaring hole at defensive end that needs to be addressed, and getting Trey Hendrickson would certainly help. So that still remains a point of concern, and I think they could have used a cornerback as well. That would have helped somewhat too, because I still think they're one cornerback short. So like I said, overall, I'll give them a C. They did fairly okay in the draft, but I think they could have done much better than they did. And that will do it for this wrap-up, this 2025 wrap-up show. If you're out working, try not to work too hard. If you're out having fun, enjoy it. And whatever you do, keep it safe. My name is Ed Moss. Take care, and goodbye for now.